Welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast, the show where metabolic health meets mental health. Through expert interviews and topic deep dives, we unpack why looking after the body is central to looking after the mind. So sit back and enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis. I'm joined by a very special guest tonight, who is the Director of Impact and Operations at Metabolic Collective, also a mental health clinician holding a master's degree in psychology and neuroscience of mental health. Natasha, is it Smikles or Smikles? How's
it's Smikles.
Smikles.
Yeah, Smikles.
Natasha Smikles, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
Natasha,
thank you.
I wonder if for the guests, if you could just give a brief background to yourself. Who is Natasha Smikles? Where have you come from? How did you get involved in the space that you're in today? What does that journey look like?
Yeah, okay. It's a bit of a journey, so I'm going to try to condense it
Cool.
as much as I can. But my background in training is in mental health specifically. So I've worked almost 20 years primarily as a psychiatric nurse, actually, and I live in Canada. So I'm located just out of Winnipeg in the province of Manitoba, and that's where my entire career has been up until very recently. So I've worked in various settings. So I've worked acute inpatient psychiatry, I've worked emergency services, I've worked doing crisis response, I did community mental health. And then the last 10 years, I did private practice primarily as a psychotherapist.
Mhm.
And then I transitioned out of that in the fall. And now I'm working as the director of impact and operations with
Okay.
Metabolic Collective. So Metabolic Collective, it's a newer nonprofit organization, and it's actually based out of the US. So I'm privileged that I get to work remotely with them.
Nice. And tell us about Metabolic Collective. What is the organization? What are you working on? What are the aims and objectives?
Yeah. So with Metabolic Collective, are you familiar with Metabolic Mind?
Yes, I am, but
Yes.
assuming the audience aren't. Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about that too. I just didn't know if you were or not, Ricky. We have this kind of new emerging field called metabolic psychiatry,
Mhm.
and it's really exciting because what we were looking at is how metabolic interventions, including things like ketogenic diets, optimizing sleep, getting the right movement in, sunlight, all of those types of strategies, how that can improve our metabolic health. And sometimes people are even just like, what are we saying when we're talking about metabolism? We're talking about how your body is utilizing energy. Because if we
Mhm.
can optimize the type of energy that our bodies are, I was going to say creating, but creating is the wrong word because we're not creating it.
Mhm.
But the way that we're harnessing our energy, we'll phrase
Yeah.
it that way, if we can optimize that, we're going to have better health outcomes, and we're starting to see that we're getting better mental health outcomes. So I'm going to do a little bit of I'll go a little bit sciencey, and then we'll bounce back to
Cool. Yeah.
kind of like what Metabolic Mind is, what Metabolic Collective is. So as you probably know, we talk often in the metabolic health space about this idea of a ketogenic diet. But the
Mhm.
primary focus of the ketogenic diet, so we're saying this is an incredibly low carb diet, very high fat. But the idea here is that if you are eating that type of diet, you're not consuming as much glucose as your energy source.
Yeah.
So most of us are utilizing glucose. So glucose comes from your carbs, it comes from your sugars, it breaks down, and then that's what we're utilizing for energy. There is another type of energy that we can live off of called ketones.
Mhm.
So when we are either in a fasted state, which is what the ketogenic diet mimics, we start to produce these ketone bodies, and we start to utilize some of those ketones as energy. And what we're seeing in the metabolic psychiatry realm is that when your brain can start running off of these ketones, it is able to, I almost want to maybe say, like, bypass certain mechanisms where some of that glucose just isn't getting absorbed properly anymore. So
Okay.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
simplify it
Yeah. Yeah.
as much as I can, because I don't want to go too in depth about that. But that is what the main the main positive impact is with a ketogenic diet or with fasting is we can produce these ketones, and in some ways it's almost like a cleaner energy source for our brains.
Yeah,
We
certainly
can
a
think of
more
it like that.
stable energy source. Yeah.
Much more stable. And I mean, too, often when I ask people, like, how do you feel after you eat a bunch of carbs? What are most people going to say? Like, I feel tired.
Yeah. You
So
get the whole
if you're not
spike
eating,
crash.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we go from spiking and crashing throughout the day to just being a lot more even keel.
Mm.
And a lot of people feel like they get improvements with their focus, their concentration, just all these cognitive benefits when they're able to reduce the amount of glucose that they need.
Mm.
So what we're seeing a lot with this metabolic psychiatry push is there's now numerous studies being done kind of throughout North America. I know in the UK, there's quite a few coming out now too, where they are taking individuals who struggle with serious mental illness. That can be schizophrenia, that can be bipolar disorder. And when they're putting some of these participants on ketogenic diets, we are starting to see improvements in their symptoms. So now we'll go back to those two organizations we were talking about. We have Metabolic Mind, which has actually been around for a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
And Metabolic Mind is an organization that does a lot of promotion around metabolic therapies. So for your listeners who aren't familiar with them, I definitely encourage to Google them. I think it's metabolicmind.org.
Mm-hmm.
But they have all kinds of educational materials about these types of therapies. They fund a lot of the research that's happening right now. So a lot of research studies are on there. And if you're a clinician, they also offer free courses that you can get some credits for, CME credits. So I think of it as Metabolic Mind is this organization where they are giving like the resources, the information, the education to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Metabolic Collective, which is who I am currently contracted to work with. And we're kind of almost like this more interactive arm. So what we have is we have an online community. So if you go to our website, metaboliccollective.org, you'll find a form on there, and one of our volunteers will get in touch with you. And if you choose to be in this online community, what we're essentially doing is we are getting like-minded people to meet with each other, and we're trying to figure out, like, how do we bring the community together? How do we give them educational resources and events? How do we get people to connect? But also, we want people to be able to feel comfortable and confident talking about these types of strategies, so then they can go out in their home communities and talk about it to their clinician, to their neighbor, to their best friend, and do some advocacy work around it. So that's kind of the difference between the two organizations. One's interactive and one's more educational, just to make it as simple as possible. But that's currently what we're doing. So we launched, gosh, it hasn't even been that long. It was June 1st, we launched that online platform. And I think we have about 120 people in there right now.
Nice.
And we have events every week in there. So there's meetup events and we have advocacy events. We just had an event that we hosted yesterday, and it was the team from Keto Mojo talking about how to monitor your ketones and your glucose levels with their equipment. So we're always trying to do that. Like, we're trying to educate people, but also bring people together as well. Because what we're finding is a lot of people hear about these studies or these strategies, or they're hearing people on podcasts talking about these remarkable results that they've got and how these interventions have helped with their functioning. And then they get really excited, or they have a loved one that's struggling and they want to be more involved. So we're kind of like the hub and that kind of that database, like that we're getting people connected and involved with each other, so that we can go out and spread this more over time.
Yeah. No, I like that. And the sort of two-edged sword, the educational piece on one hand, but also bringing together the community piece on the other hand, which I think is important for making it tangible for people, because it's very easy to listen to podcasts and stuff like that. But when you get back into real life and you're dealing with your day job and the stresses of paying the bills and dealing with everything that goes on in life, and then you're having to implement something that was just knowledge somewhere, it's so easy for that implementation gap to become a problem. So I like that. I
Oh,
think the
yeah.
community sense is a great way of closing the implementation gap in people's lives. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the nice thing too about that way that that community um, kind of functions, we have there's kind of different categories that we can have in there too over time. So right now, there's an events page that you can access, and then there's kind of a general feed that's almost like your Facebook feed. So if people have questions or people know of an event that's coming up, we can post about it in there, or sometimes we'll run polls just to kind of be curious about like what are other
Mm,
people doing out there in terms of their strategies. And then we're going to be developing and building almost like a resource library in there too over time,
hmm
so that if somebody's like, well, I would like to, I don't know, be able to download a quick checklist that I could give a physician, that's maybe
mm,
something we could
mm.
develop over time. But we're
Nice.
also hosting a lot of like kind of community calls to see what do people want so that we know
Yeah.
what to develop
No, I like
in
that. Yeah.
there.
That's awesome. Awesome. I like that you struggled a little bit at the beginning there when you were describing a ketogenic and you tripped on the word a little bit diet because it's not a diet, is it?
I
It's a
know.
lifestyle. I think that
I know.
that's probably the most apt description is lifestyle because it is a way of life. It's not something that you do in pursuit of a particular like goal, and then you reach that goal, and then you can stop and revert to your old way of life because all that's going to happen then is all the symptoms and everything come marching back in with vengeance, and then you're in a worse position than what you began. uh, Ask me, I know I've learned this the hard way.
Yeah.
So we were talking off camera just at the start, and I gave you a little bit of my background, but I went onto a ketogenic diet in early 2018 just to fix primarily physical health issues that I was having. I hadn't connected the metabolic health, mental health connection at that point. It hadn't occurred to me. But then in late 2019, I needed to finish off my master's degree. And working full time, married. My wife and I had our first kid in 2015. So our daughter was still very, very young. And I was studying part time after hours. So it was a lot of late nights, a lot of really early mornings, and a lot of pressure. And as you do, I thought, okay, well, the diet can go out the window for a time because I just need to eat what's convenient because I need that time to work on my dissertation and finish my studies off. And so I started eating for convenience. And boy, oh boy, the weight piled back on, all the inflammation and the problems that I'd had flew right back in. My cognition went out the window. And in hindsight, what a stupid decision to have made because of all the things I could have sacrificed at that point, my cognition was not one of them. I've probably made it a lot harder for myself than I needed to. But yeah, no, I love that. And I'm good friends with Ben Boyd, who's one of your volunteers at Metabolic Collective.
Yes.
So he talks a lot about the events and stuff like that. Are you primarily just North America based at the moment? Is there aspirations to go global? What's the state of play looking like?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the actual organization it's registered in the US, but the majority of the people we have in that community, they're from all over the world. Like we have individuals from Australia and Germany and France and all over the States, Canadians, there's someone from Mexico that I've met through there. So it's really
Awesome.
interesting. Yeah, so even some of our events that we host, like sometimes we'll try to do them like on evenings and weekends to hit those other time zones
Mm.
because we know we can have a bit of a global audience in there.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's really good. And you also started mentioning some of the studies, and if I'm not mistaken, the study is it UCLS, their new study that Dr. Sethi co-authored, looking at the ketogenic diet for schizophrenia and bipolar. That was published, I think, 2 days ago on the 8th.
I so I saw that there was a study that was published. I think I saw it yesterday. I bookmarked it. I haven't actually read it yet.
Okay, good,
But
good.
this is
Yeah,
this is like it's the randomized control trial one. Is
correct.
that
The
the one you're
first
talking about?
randomized
Yeah.
control. Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I mean, as far as and for the audience, the like degree of evidence, there's a hierarchy in science, and randomized control is pretty high up
Yes.
there, certainly better than a lot of observational stuff. Um, so for this to be the first randomized control trial is a big deal. It goes beyond pilot. It starts to edge metabolic psychiatry out of the realm of emergent and more into established, which is awesome. Um, I found it interesting. I'm in the process of putting a talk together that I'm going to be giving in London in early August. And so I'm pulling on information. And I'd been keeping an eye on this, knowing that it was coming. And so when it dropped, I was like, oh, back to my literature review. Like, what does it say? What do I need to update? Where does that fit into the talk? But yeah, really, really good stuff. And the thing that I like most about it, and it comes back to my point about lifestyle, is the participants were divided into ketogenic and then control, um, all on their regular medication, so that the only difference was ketogenic diet or regular diet. And then the majority of them were on for 1 month. And as you'd expect, not too much difference after the first month. Slight difference, but not statistically significant. And then the participants had the option to volunteer to continue through to 4 months. And some of them did, and they got followed through to the end of the fourth month. And that is where the statistically significant difference came through. And you were seeing a marked improvement in the management of their condition and just through diet alone. That's mind blowing.
It is. It is. And that's where too. So I saw kind of like some snippets and highlights, but I like to actually like read the study and do my
Mm.
own thorough review of it. So that was going to be my weekend, my weekend project here, because I like to make sure I like can like sit down with my coffee and dedicate the time and make sure that I fully understand
Mm.
everything that's going on in the actual
Yeah.
literature there. But it's funny because even when you said that, a couple years ago, or maybe even a year ago, I would have been that person that's like, oh my gosh, I have to read it right away. But I think it's like, I'm also like, there's so many studies coming out now, and I just know I'm like, of
Mm.
course it's going to have great results. How could it
Yeah.
not? Because they all do. And I live in this community, and I know so many people who have struggled with mental illness and are in remission from their symptoms because of these diets. So
Mm.
it's funny because I think for me at this point, I just know what it's gonna say.
Yeah. No, I appreciate like what that feels like. And I'd spent a long time sort of building up community and presence in the metabolic health space because it absolutely fascinates me. It took
Yeah,
over as a key obsession in my life.
yeah.
And as I was talking to you about before we started recording, my son was born in 2021, and then at about 4 years old, he was diagnosed with autism, level 3 autism, and his needs started to emerge after that. So for anyone who hasn't had exposure to a special needs kid, it's not obvious right at the beginning where they have special educational needs that there's something off. Those needs
Yeah.
emerge over time. And at stages where they should start to become more independent, more able to communicate, etc., it then becomes clear that they aren't, and then there starts to be
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
gap that forms between them and their peers. And so I found myself going from the metabolic health sort of community into the I'm a special needs dad, and I'm in
Yeah.
this community now, and I'm trying to connect with other special needs parents and professionals and stuff and figure things out. And this is a community that is so far removed from metabolic health, it's frightening. It is actually, it's mind blowing. And that's not a dig at the community. To paint a picture, the stress that comes with looking after a kid with additional needs is different. It's chronic. It's not something you can escape from. Their
Hmm.
needs become your entire mission. And what most people do, and what I would have done if I'd not had the background that I had, is you neglect your own well-being because you're too busy trying to sort the kids' well-being. And you busy yourself with fighting the local authority, trying to get the additional need support in place, trying to make sure they got the school placement they need. Maybe you homeschooling them instead of putting them in school because you don't trust the system. That comes with its own sort of admin and overhead and headache. all of these things happen, and then you're also navigating your kids' needs. So there's meltdowns, there's dysregulation, there's broken sleep patterns, there's eating difficulties. My son's undergoing assessment for ARFID at the moment. So someone who's all about metabolic health and like healthy eating and stuff, I tried, like really tried to get him to eat not quite ketogenic, but like down the road of animal based, certainly more
Hmm.
essential
Hmm.
nutrient focused. Sensory needs just said no, not going to happen. Just rejects it outright, and that's not fussiness. That's not him being naughty. It's sensory overload, and you can see he's completely unable to. And
Yeah.
that is something else to navigate. Like that really becomes difficult. So it's easy to see how these parents and caregivers just neglect their own well-being. And as a consequence, they've not really heard about metabolic health before. And there's this stigma within the community that talking about caregiver well-being is somehow some sort of vain indulgence. It's like toxic positivity. And it's yeah, it's something else. It really is. And I come at it,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it going, well, I would be just like these people. I would be burnt out. I would be depressed. I would be unable to function correctly had I not had the background that I had. But I thankfully got into metabolic health beforehand, and I knew enough, and I'd been exposed to Dr. Palmer's work and Dr. Ead's work and Dr. Setti's work. And whilst at the time, the importance of Dr. Palmer's unifying theory, for example, didn't make much sense to me. Now, holy moly, is it important. And I implement stuff in day to day, trying to make sure that I'm safeguarding my ability to be the caregiver that I need to be. And I do that primarily by
Yes.
making sure that my metabolic health is looked after because I understand that it's the foundation upon which everything else stands.
Yeah. It's like you're sitting on the airplane and they give you the tutorial that if you need the mask, you put it on yourself first before you put it on your kid.
Correct.
Like
Yeah,
that's it. We're kind of talking about that right now.
100%.
And because here's the other thing. You, you have your autistic son. He's probably so incredibly hypersensitive
Mm,
that if you are moody and
mm.
agitated and grumpy and fed up, it's going to escalate the whole household.
It
So,
absolutely
taking
does.
care of yourself, your needs as a caregiver, those things have to be prioritized in the types of situations that you're in. And it's awful for me to even hear that that's almost like shamed and like
Yeah.
stigmatized, like shame on you for even thinking about yourself because you should 100% put all of your energy and focus into your child. Like, yeah, to be able to do that, you have to make sure that you're feeling good and healthy too.
100%. I had a post, it may even have been yesterday, or maybe it was Wednesday. I can't remember. But I've joined a whole bunch of sort of special needs Facebook groups local to me here in the UK, and I'm just
Yeah.
trying to share the message and sort of get out there that actually, like, if you pay attention to this metabolic psychiatry space, there's a lot of good info that can really help. I know because I'm living it. And I had in a fairly prominent Facebook group for a fairly prominent special needs organization, and I won't name them. The objective here is not to name and shame, but one of the admins rejected the post that I'd put forward, saying this is not specific to special needs. I was like,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
but you're not connecting the dots, and maybe that's because I'm not doing a good enough job explaining it. But when you understand the caregiver well-being is central to the outcome of the child,
Yeah.
then it's exactly specific. It's the foundation upon which everything should stand. But it's so
Yeah.
easy in the community for people just to go, I don't have time for that. I'm too busy. I'm too burnt out. I
Yeah.
can't concentrate on stuff like that. And I mentioned at the beginning of the call implementation gap. And I think that is the problem because going back to your oxygen mask analogy that we get on the planes, I've got a very good friend who's a psychologist here in the UK, and he works with autistic teenagers, is his specialty. He helps autistic teenagers through social anxiety. And he and I have had many conversations in which I bring up the fact that I think that there isn't enough support for the caregiver, and he agrees with me. But all the guidance that shapes how they work as psychologists within the NHS, which is the National Health Service here in the UK, has stipulations for what you should do as the caregiver. And he says we often give the oxygen mask analogy and stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's great. It's there on paper. You're at least telling parents in principle you need to look after yourself, but no one's giving them the practical keys how to do that. No one's helping them understand how in this reality, how in the stress and the strain and the struggle of your day-to-day life, how do you look after yourself?
Yes.
What are the key principles? What are the baby little incremental steps that you could take? And I think that's something that the metabolic psychiatry space is starting to do really, really well, because a lot of the information is being broken down to, well, just make this incremental change in your diet, or just do this one thing for your sleep hygiene and see if that improves your sleep quality, and so on and so forth. So I think that's at least where I'm trying to get into the community and sort of help people along to close that implementation gap.
Yeah. And I think too, we're almost just like we're in a seed planting phase right now. All of this is still so new that it is up to people like yourself and myself in the small space of metabolic psychiatry, and just even those smaller spaces of clinicians talking about metabolism in general, and people hearing about metabolism and talking about it more publicly. That is how we're going to spread awareness. Because even though you're kind of like, your main target here and everything you've been talking about is like, the caregiver space, and specifically caregivers for children who are disabled. I work the mental health space. I'll be very honest and frank. Like, I had this probably earlier this year. Yeah, it was like maybe December, January-ish. I had a psychiatrist make a written complaint to my nursing college because I was promoting ketogenic diets on social media. So the haters are gonna hate.
Yeah, they are.
But I also think part of it, though, too, is because we're always going to be faced with people who are just ignorant and they don't want to hear it. And that's fine, because I think that part of my mission and what I'm trying to do here is to at least educate the people who want to hear it and want to improve their lives and want to know that there's other choices.
Yeah.
I don't have to convince everybody. I have to convince the people who actually want to utilize the knowledge for themselves to make their lives better.
That's exactly it. I mean, I have a concept that I call logical entry gates. And what I mean by that is, when I first got into metabolic health, it was nutrition, because nutrition made sense to me. I'm massive foodie, red-blooded South African male, love food, always have. Big meals, happy me. Food made sense. So I was open to learning about food, but I heard people talking about light exposure, and there was not a chance I was going to take any of that in. I dismissed it as woohoo nonsense right off the bat. I wasn't even willing to give it the time of day. And then over time, the more I started to understand mechanistically what was going on, why eating a species appropriate diet did the things that it did for my metabolic health, why exercise did the things that it did, why sleep did the things that it did, I started to get more and more exposed to actually, well, no, those same things are impacted by light as well, and alignment of circadian rhythm and all this weird woohoo stuff that you don't learn about that growing up. It was all like space age and weird.
Yeah.
But slowly over time, people I took seriously started talking about it, and I was like, oh, I have to reconsider this now, because I respect this person, and like they're talking about it like it's a serious thing. So I had to wrestle with my own cognitive dissonance and get to the space where, okay, I was wrong. I was completely wrong, massively wrong, and actually it's hugely impactful.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the best things we can do is lay out information at what I would call a broad foundational level. And for me, what that is the evolutionary consistent lifestyle factors. So things that have been with us since time immemorial, things like nutrition, movement, sleep, light exposure, and connection to nature or grounding. Now, grounding is a bit of a contentious one because most people will think earthing, and the evidence for earthing is emergent and contested. But at the same time, it also includes microbial exposure. And I think that's fairly well established now. And it's the same practice that achieves both. It's bare skin contact with outside.
Yes.
And that is massively beneficial to us. And those have been with us since time immemorial. They're not biohacks. They're not things that we've learned to do. We learned to use cold plunges to aid our metabolic health, and they do. We've learned to use saunas to aid our metabolic health, and they do. We've learned to use breathing techniques to aid it, and they do. But these are learned adaptations or learned skills. They're not things that naturally informed our biology. So I think if we expose people to the things that have naturally informed our biology, and in my opinion, the things that our biology still expects, because our biology isn't all that fundamentally changed to what it was in the upper Pleistocene. But our environment 100%. And lifestyles are wildly different. And so if we expose people to these foundational concepts, they can find the logical entry gateway for themselves, the one little thread that resonates, and they can just work on that one thing. And if they'll just work on that one thing and try to be a little bit better today than what they were yesterday, and do that consistently for a period of time, they'll hopefully learn enough and experience enough of a difference. They'll then be open to considering the next thing, because they'll start to understand that mechanistically these touch the same endpoint. And then for their stuff there that they should probably pay attention to. And that's how you start to build the bigger picture of what metabolic health is, because it's this complex jigsaw puzzle. It's not just a diet. It's not just good sleep. It's not just exercise.
Yeah. And what I like about just this whole idea of thinking about metabolic health too, is we've all been told, oh, you need to eat, like we need to eat better. We need to exercise. Like we all know that. But now we can get more specific about what do we mean by saying it? Because I feel like we were always told that, but no one actually gave us the map. And now the map is becoming clearer because we didn't have that before. It wasn't clear on, oh, maybe reducing your carbohydrates is good because we're told things like certain grains can be healthy and that's fine. Like I understand that for some people. For a lot of people, they typically will feel better, lower carb. And things like fat, right? That probably having a lot of fat is actually going to help your brain more. And we shouldn't be scared of fat.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, everything was low fat.
Yes.
So we have to kind of retrain our ways of thinking here too. But what I do like is just when we're thinking about that field of metabolic health, there's so much science now to back up what this is actually doing, you know, to us on a cellular level and how it's helping and healing our mitochondria, which is harnessing that energy.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about the field as well, because it is more hard science focused, if I can use that expression. Part of my biggest struggles growing up with regards to nutrition was it was all epidemiological and all observational studies. And it doesn't have the rigor. And so it was very easy to misconstrue things. And then you sort of try and educate yourself and you jump on Google and you start looking stuff up. And it's just, there's so much contradictory information out there. You don't know where to start. It's a minefield. So to have something that leans more on the sort of the experimental side of things rather than the observational side of things, that to me, like I was immediately drawn to that going, okay, well, this is mechanistic and show you input, mechanism, output. I like that. That makes sense to me. I can use that.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, I do have a question about your son, because you kind of indicated that you might have tried some diet strategies, but that's just not working the way you would hope. But I'm just curious to know, are there other metabolic interventions that you try to do with your son? Like things like is there like curtains closed, cold room at night? I'm just curious
We
to
so
know.
yeah, we oh
Did
well,
you know?
it's summer here at the moment, and we're having what the sensationalized headlines calling it Super El Nino or some nonsense like that. So it's warm at the moment. So curtains are open, fan going, all of that sort of good stuff. But yeah, we're trying red light therapy with him, red lights
Okay.
and near infrared. And so I've done a bit of research and spoken to some good friends of mine in the neuroscience space and figured it can't do harm. So it's worth a try
Yeah.
because I came across a lot of information suggesting that children with autism have inflammation on the brain akin to encephalitis, and that if you were treating them for encephalitis, they actually show improvement in cognition and behavior. Now, that's not to say that you cure autism. You don't. You
Yeah.
just improve
Yeah. Yeah.
outcomes. Um,
Yeah.
it seems silly to have to say that, but the community gets so defensive the moment you talk about interventions aimed at improving outcomes. There's this, if we want to talk toxic positivity, the toxic positivity at the moment that I struggle with is this idea that it's just a different way of being and you need to leave them and accept them for how they are. Maybe that's true for like someone who is very mild, what we would call level one, still high
Yeah.
functioning, etc., who can talk, who can have a conversation with you, might be a little bit socially awkward, but can get along in day-to-day life. But when you take someone like my boy who was completely non-verbal until very recently, and he's now pre-verbal. So he's 5 years old, but he has the vocabulary of maybe an 18-month-old. So there's a
Okay.
chasm between him and his peers.
Yeah.
It's a disability. Like it's not just a different ability, as people like to say.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I do think that we need to have, or at least be able to talk about interventions that improve outcomes. And so we are trying red light therapy to see if red light and infrared light. What is it? It's at 40 hertz pulses. I can't remember the exact wavelength. Um, and it's just for 2 minutes every second day. So
Right.
having them on different sides
Yeah.
of the head
Yeah.
while he sleeps, just to see if that helps, and all with neural inflammation, see if we can bring that down. Diet wise, it just hasn't worked out. We're hoping that through the diagnosis for ARFID, we can get some help with his actual eating. And once we get him to a point where he's
Yeah.
introducing new foods and stuff, then obviously we can try and steer that to healthier choices of food. But at the moment, there's only one thing he will eat, and we dare not interfere with that because
Oh,
it's the only thing he
of
eats.
course. Oh, of course. Yeah. You have to choose your battles there. But
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was curious about the interventions because I also think too, if like every little thing you can do probably does have a domino effect, right? Like that it probably is actually going to improve outcomes. So I was kind of curious to know too. We were talking a little bit about grounding and just being outside and in nature. How does he do outside?
I love the outdoors. We're very fortunate with
Yeah.
where we live. We're in rural Hampshire, in the countryside. We've got a lovely big garden. So he'll get home from school and he'll be straight on the swing outside. Him and his sister will play outside
Oh,
together. So we're really good from
yeah.
that perspective. Very fortunate. But yeah, so that is good. He sleeps. I mean, sleep is a difficult one because it's very typical for children on the spectrum to have issues with sleeping and with their sleep patterns. And he seems to, knock on wood, it's okay at the moment. But
We can't jinx it.
well, yeah, what we noticed was if he's going through like a particularly large growth spurt, or he's going through what I would assume is a developmental phase cognitively, um, his sleep will be disrupted. And then you've got a week or two of disrupted sleep, and then things will settle down again, and then he'll sleep through quite nicely. So, yeah, sleep has been a weird one, but at the moment, he won't go to bed until quite late. We try and get him into bed from about 7 o'clock, and that's probably because it's the UK and the sun is up until 10, and he's probably looking out of his curtains going, still blazing daylight. Like, what are you doing? So
Yeah, yeah.
it takes a while to eventually accept that he needs to be in bed and settle down and go to sleep. But yeah, we're doing what we can.
Yeah. I mean, even that though, right? Like how you described, like being outside and being on the swing. Like to me, like that's all metabolic interventions, right?
Yeah,
Like you're getting that direct sunlight, you're feeling connected. Like he probably feels really connected with his environment when he's out there.
yeah. He's a happy boy out in his garden having fun.
Yeah,
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 yeah. No, it is good. It is good.
yeah.
But
Or
yeah,
let's
and
say the flip side, the thing that would be metabolically unhealthy would be keeping him in a room all the time, not paying any attention or caring about his sleep, not doing any of the red light interventions, and just like
well,
letting him be on a screen all the time. Like that would be probably one some of the most
yeah.
unhealthy things we could do because it's metabolically hindering.
Mm. I like that you bring that up, and I just want to take a second because there might be some special needs parents in the audience, and hopefully there are, who are listening to the conversation and wondering why all the fuss? Like, what 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 difference is this making? And my opinion, understanding what I do, and limited as that is, I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but as I understand it, developmentally, we have certain windows in young childhood that once they close are closed for life.
Yeah.
And a special needs child already at a deficit needs that extra help, needs that extra intervention, whatever that looks like, whether it's metabolic intervention, whether it's social intervention, whatever, all of it probably, to try and meet those windows as best they can so that you don't leave them stunted. And I think it's perhaps a heavy burden to bear, but I think the onus is on us as the parents because we're the ones with agency that he doesn't have. So we can do things now to help that are
Yes.
not easy, that are not convenient, that are difficult to navigate, but might help hit certain developmental windows, or at least give him a platform from which to develop as best he can. Which,
Yes.
if we didn't do at all, if we were just taking the easy route, just choosing the thing that was least resistance, giving him the TV or the tablet or whatever it was that just kept the peace all the time, then chances are we'd probably stunt him further and he wouldn't grow up to be able to be independent. And that's the only thing we really want as parents. We
Yeah.
just want him to, whatever that looks like, be able to be independent and hopefully have his own family and his own circle of friends, like whatever that may look like. I obviously
Yes.
hope in my heart of hearts that he is almost indistinguishable from his peers, but there's no guarantee that we get there. That's the aim. There's no guarantee that we get there. But yeah, the ultimate goal is just to help them get to the point where they're independent and able to function.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you're already doing a phenomenal job because you are thinking of those things. And as difficult as it is, you have an understanding of what these types of interventions could potentially do over time if they're compounded.
Yeah.
It's like compounding interest. It's like the same
Yeah.
thing. Like keep up with the routine, let it compound over time because that's going to put them on the best trajectory.
Hmm. I like that. I use that same analogy for caregiver well-being. And I talk about investing in your metabolic health being like a pension. It's that
Yeah. Yeah.
small incremental improvement day to day that if you can be consistent, and you only have to be that 1% better today than what you were yesterday. But if you can be consistent at that over time, that compound interest is the thing that pays off and gives you longevity. Another way of saying that
Yeah.
would be improves your health span across the duration of your lifespan. So yeah, it's exact same principle. It's the compound interest that pays back.
Yes. Yes. Now, I want to, just because when you mentioned who your audience might be, I want to go back on something else that you said
Mhm.
when you're kind of talking about like this toxic positivity and kind of just being like, well, you know, they can just be themselves. So I'm going to speak as a woman who is diagnosed with ADHD in my late 30s, who could, so we're saying ADHD, we could, I don't even like the word, but we'll say neurodivergent.
Mhm.
I don't want to fit into the, oh, my symptoms are okay, so let them run wild category.
Mm,
Because I did that for 37 years, not knowing how much these interventions could help until I went on a ketogenic diet and my life completely transformed for the better
mm,
because my functioning and my cognition and my focus and my mood are so much better. It was like I'm a completely different person now. So if I would have bought into, oh, it's okay to have ADHD and forget your phone charger 3 times on your way to work and change my outfits 5 times before I leave the door every day and have a ritual where I also have like OCD symptoms and I need to check my stove 3 times and I need to do a specific chant when I set my alarm to go to bed. And we'll see if I have gas in the car. And no, sorry, honey, I can't pick up milk on my way home from work because I don't even know how I'm going to navigate parking my car and going into the grocery store to get that. And if I do on the whim go and get it, I'm probably actually going to go into the store, not get it, and get 10 other things I didn't want.
mm.
So, sorry, that's not really like the, your symptoms are just you that I wanted to, like, I didn't want to fit into that mold.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So, I want a choice. I'm glad I found another option that works for
mm.
me.
I think, yeah, I try to be careful in how I navigate it, but I think there's a balance that needs to be struck between we want a world where it's not as judgmental as it was in the past. Because when I was growing up, kids who now would be called neurodivergent were the stupid ones, the slow ones, the ones who wouldn't amount to anything. We're talking
Yeah.
about 1980s, 1990s South Africa. It wasn't exactly the creme de la creme of
Yes.
how to behave in the world, shall we say. But yeah, it's good that we moved away from the sort of harshness in judgment, but the pendulum also can't swing too far in that direction because,
No.
as you've just described, it un, uncovering the fact that a ketogenic diet helps your mental health, you've significantly improved your quality of life. And that's not about anyone else's judgment. That's your subjective experience, your lived experience. And
Oh,
you've just
yeah,
clearly
yeah,
articulated there that it's improved significantly. So that's who wouldn't want that?
yeah. And I mean, and ultimately, that was my choice to do that for myself.
Mm,
If I would have bought into the, oh, it's okay to live with all your ADHD symptoms and we should normalize it, I would have been struggling my whole entire life
yeah.
had I bought into that narrative.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll go back to my point about parents having agency, because as you've said there, it was a decision you've made for yourself. I can already imagine people going, oh, well, then I'll let my child grow up and then give them the choice when they're an adult. And you, no, you have agency now. Make the good
Yes.
choices on their behalf now because
Yeah.
they will thank you for it later.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't have to be you're throwing 101 wild interventions in there. It could
Mm,
just be as simple as like maybe a little less screen time, maybe a little bit more outdoor time, maybe a little bit more sunlight, maybe a little less sugar.
yeah.
Again, that compounding kind of
Mm,
idea, right? Just like a 1 or 2% change every day
yeah,
makes a big gain in the long run.
absolutely. And that's perhaps an important thing to touch on as well, because it's not just about the compound interest. It's the fact that metabolic interventions take time to manifest the benefit. It's not an overnight switch. It doesn't just magic away symptoms and magically improve everything because yesterday you ate a good meal. It
Yes.
takes
Yeah.
consistency to bring that benefit forward. And yeah, so for me, when I went on a ketogenic diet, at least I'd come across the principle of 12 weeks. I don't know how, I don't know why, but 12 weeks just seemed to make sense. And I thought, okay, fine. 3 months, I'll give it a 3 month window. Let's just attempt it. and see what happens. And for the first few weeks, it made no real difference to me at all. After month one, maybe a little bit of improvement, but second month onwards, third month onwards, completely revolutionary, changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to stick at it and be consistent, not perfect, but just consistent for a good
Yeah.
period of time to give your physiology time to adapt, because human physiology, homeostasis, wants to keep you where you are. And the body
Yes.
doesn't want to
Yes.
change. It wants to
Yeah.
stay where it is. And you have to be
Yeah.
consistent in your lifestyle change to tell your body, okay,
Yeah.
well, no, this is the new normal. You need to accept this.
Yeah. But I also don't want to think that if you're consistent and you fall off, that you're like off the wagon completely. You just jump right
Mm.
back on.
Yeah.
I always think of it as like when I worked as a psychotherapist, if I was working with someone, let's say, as an example, who had addictions and they would go to AA and they would get like their sobriety chips, right?
Mm.
And they're sober for a year and then all of a sudden they have one relapse and they think they're at ground zero. It's like, no, no, no. You're
Yeah.
like, you had one relapse out of 365 days. That is
Yeah.
still a win. It is still significant. Don't dismiss it. Because I don't want
Yeah.
people to also think like consistency means like it has to be 100% all the time
Yeah.
perfection,
Consistency is not
because that's
perfection.
not what we're
Yeah.
saying here either.
Correct. Yeah. No, consistency is not perfection. Consistency is the habit overall. It's not,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but if 80% of the time you're doing the right thing, you're consistent at that thing, and that's fine. That's good.
Yes.
You'll still reap benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's funny you bring up the whole sobriety thing. I'm just over 1,000 days sober now myself. So yeah, that
Wow.
uh,
Wow.
I grew up in a small
Well,
town in
that's
South Africa
consistency.
where, yeah, alcohol was just, it was the entertainment form. And it was too much of an entertainment form for too long. So yeah,
Yeah.
eventually I got to the point where I realized and was able to admit to myself that I had a problem with alcohol. And from that place, then be like, okay, well, this is not a thing I do anymore. I can do without it. I'm a better person without it. And so
Yeah.
that's actually been quite revolutionary as well. But
Wow.
I
Good for you.
probably wouldn't have got to that place had I not started improving my metabolic health first.
So did you do diet changes first and then?
Diet. So I've always been active. Um, so for most of my life, I've been active. It was just part and parcel of growing up in South Africa, where I did like physical activity was just part of life. So I've never doubted its importance. But diet was the big one for me. So nutritional lifestyle. I used to eat what I wanted when I wanted because I did the exercise and I thought I could. That justified it. And then that was true through my teens. It was true through much of my 20s, but my late 20s into my 30s, it became very evident that that was no longer true. The elixir of youth was now gone, and the chickens were coming home to roost from like decades of poor eating. So diet was the first one. Then I started focusing on my sleep because I used to be an idiot who fancied myself part of the sleepless elite. I used to average less than 5 hours a night all the time
Yeah. Yeah.
and pride myself in that like a fool. And then I started to understand
Yeah.
that no, actually, sleep is not this passive rest state. It's actually a metabolically active state. And there's very important things that happen there that can't happen at any other point, like lymphatic drainage, for example. And if you don't do that regularly, then you increase your risk for Alzheimer's and dementias and negative stuff down the line. And then again, that's not there's no acute downside to it. It's decades of a poor habit, and then eventually you end up in a disease state, and then it's late. Like then, what do you do about it? Like it took you decades to get there. You're not going to flip that overnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I fixed my sleep, and then started learning about light exposure and understanding getting out in the morning, aligning your sort of circadian rhythm appropriately, staying away from screens and stuff late at night, which is probably a little bit hypocritical because it's 10 o'clock and I'm sat here on
For
a
you.
screen
Yeah.
doing a podcast, but needs must. Um, but yeah, so nutrition, sleep, light exposure, grounding, and then put together the overall picture that actually metabolic health is these foundational lifestyle factors that I'd spoken about before. And if I started to align my lifestyle to at least cater for them as best I could, then I'm investing in my metabolic health daily and I enjoy benefit as a result.
Yeah. So you really kind of like, you did take this approach of like slowly kind of incorporating one thing and then the next thing and just
Yeah,
building off of.
which led me to understanding what the concept that I spoke about earlier, logical entry gateways. Because I realized that my cognitive distance made it impossible for me to accept light exposure, for example, until
Right.
I'd learned enough about metabolic health to understand that it works on many of the same mechanisms as eating does, as sleep does, as exercise does, which is why I get a bit annoyed with the online community being as tribal as what it is, because human beings being what we are, like people will have nutrition impact their life and they'll jump so hard into the nutritional camp and be unwilling to accept that anything else works. Or
Yeah.
they'll jump into the exercise camp and exercise is everything, and the sleep camp and sleep is everything. But no, they all work because they all work on this thing
Pretty
called
important.
metabolic health. It's the
Yeah.
foundational thing that they all influence. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think that that's just such an important thing too, right? Because you could have the most like pristine, spot on, nutrient dense diet, but if you're sitting all day and you're sleeping 2 hours, you're not going to feel great.
yeah, it's not going to offset the rest of it.
No,
No,
no.
no.
Uh,
Oh man, yeah, no, it's been a journey, and I guess that's the other thing is it is a journey. It's a marathon. It's a lifelong
yes.
thing. You never reach the point where I've made it and I never have to change again. As you're aging and as your body changes, there's all this like I never had any of this white stuff before I got married and had kids, so I blame them. But as you age, the goalposts move and you've got to
Yeah.
reassess and adjust and sort of move with them as well and figure out like, okay, well, what do I need now? What does it look like now? Am I training too much? Am I maybe overdoing it? Do I need to step back a little bit? Do I need to maybe have
Yeah.
a little bit more focus on my nutrition because I'm not able to recover from training as well as I used to? Like you're
Yes.
constantly playing this game of adjustment and it's lifestyle. It's probably the
Yeah.
best way I can put it.
Yeah. We're not going to be able to biohack our way out of
Mhm.
problems we have with aging or for women, hormone changes that will continually happen down the road. Like there's no really clear cut metabolic strategies or interventions that are going to help with that. But again, it's the compounding piece. I had a thought too when you were saying that again about caregivers like starting to really think about prioritizing themselves at times and their own needs because if you are a parent who has a child that's disabled, you also want to put yourself in a position that you can be as healthy as you can be when your child is an adult and you are elderly.
Mhm. 100%, yeah. Like I said, the goal is to get to the point where the child becomes independent. It's not guaranteed, though.
Yeah.
So it's not guaranteed
Yeah.
that my boy will grow up to be independent. There is a risk that he will depend on us for the rest of his life or for the rest of our
Yeah.
lives, so long as we're around. So
Yeah.
there is a pressure on us to make sure that we're capable and healthy and around to be able to
Yeah.
facilitate that, because who else is going to do that for him?
Yes. And again, let's say let's say he is independent. He's still going to be on the spectrum.
Mm,
He's still probably going to be very sensitive. So
mhm,
even if he's independent and he has parents who he can sense are unhealthy,
mm.
that's not going to be helpful either because
Yeah,
he's going to sense
sure.
all that and he's going to be worried all the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Good point. We've got to lead by example. So yeah, hopefully I can over time get this
Absolutely.
message accepted within the community and start to get more and more people to start to take their health not as a vain indulgence, but as the key foundational thing upon which the entire system should be built.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. I think a lot of times people just get really so fixated on like jobs or finances or the things they're supposed to do. And there's also something that you said too about like sleep, right? We do have this weird thing in our culture where it's like, oh, you're a warrior if you are super sleep deprived.
Yeah.
But I
No, you're
always
not.
feel like sometimes people are like, oh, if I'm like sleep deprived and I'm burnt out and I'm still doing these things, that somehow it makes me like feel good about myself in a way. Like I
Yeah,
can keep sacrificing, even though it's really not going to be helpful long term at all. Like that's just going to be so problematic. But our culture almost rewards that.
yeah, you almost get like this weird little honor badge that goes along with your self-sacrifice, and
Yeah.
self-annihilation is probably a better expression for it because that's what you're actually doing. It's not good for you in any way, shape, or form. But yeah,
No.
hopefully, well, if I could learn and I could change, then anyone can because there was nothing special about me. I'm just a regular guy. I just happened to be a regular guy who needed to not be fat anymore and didn't want to count calories because there was nothing more scary to me than walking away from a meal still hungry. And so I thought, no, there must be something. There must be a way to be satiated after a meal and still be able to lose weight. And I discovered a ketogenic diet. And I thought, yes, it's full of fat and full of meat and all that. I love that. I can give up bread and pasta and all that sort of stuff. And actually, I figured out that I'm gluten intolerant because when I stopped bread and pasta and everything like that, the stomach cramping and the gas went away. And I was like, you mean that's not just normal digestion? Mind blown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And here's the thing too, like all of us who are kind of in this metabolic health space in general, we've all had that moment where we've either looked for something or something has come to us where we're like, oh, isn't that interesting? And I want to start doing it and applying it. And I think that that's so great about some of the work that you're doing because you're never going to know how, how far it's going to go.
mm,
You're probably, and who knows, this conversation right now could probably impact or influence someone's life. We're never going to hear about it. That's kind of the beauty of it in some
yeah,
ways.
yeah,
And then they might impact somebody else's life. And that's what we're trying to do
yeah,
too. I always think of it
100%.
as like the ripple effect.
Yeah, 100%. That's the hope. I hope that one person, at least just one person will hear this and just be inspired to make just that incremental change and be consistent at that, and then feel the difference, live the difference, and then talk to their
Yeah.
friends and their family about it. And then so it sort of ripples out. So yeah, hopefully that's the aim.
Yeah.
Well, Natasha, thank you very much. This has been absolutely wonderful. I've loved talking to you. Um, Something that I like to ask my guests at the end of each conversation is if there's one thing that you would like the audience to take away with them, what is the one thing that you want to resonate?
I think the thing that usually comes to mind is for people to feel comfortable and confident to find the answers that they need for their own health.
Mm.
Knowing that, yes, sometimes there's a lot of misleading information, but don't let that deter you either. I think what I see a lot, and this is also just coming from working in the healthcare setting, is people rely sometimes too much on what one professional opinion can tell them.
Mm.
If it doesn't feel right, look for other answers.
Mm.
But ultimately, it's up to us to take agency for our own health and become our best advocates for ourselves.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you framed that as agency because that's exactly what it is. In modern society, we're almost taught to assume that our health is fine until it's not. And then we have to outsource it to someone else. But one of the most
Yes.
powerful things you can do is just take agency over your own health again. Yeah, brilliant.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Natasha, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Ricky. This was great. I love this discussion. So thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.